Hi everybody. So glad you decided to tune in to another Mindful Mutt Moments. Let me put my controller down here. I'll put it there. How about that? Welcome back. We have Bodhi here. And I'm Corey, if you don't know, from Path of Friendship. And this is where we take a moment every day to just connect with our dogs on a present moment, mindful, one-on-one level. Basically the way they experience the world, which is not worrying about stuff that's going to happen later or stuff that happened earlier, or constantly locked on and attached to a million different thoughts spinning around in our heads. Especially these days with all the stuff that's going on, we're always thinking about, well, what if this happens and what if that happens, and all this. There's just a lot of stress and anxiety, and our dogs don't really deal with that. They're just very connected to what's going on now. And really that's the only place that you can really exist is now. Even the thoughts about what happened before or worries about what's going to happen later, those thoughts are existing here, now. So really it's the only place we can exist, and it's nice to share that kind of moment with our dogs, because to be good friends with them, which is really our goal, we have to experience the world in a way that they experience it. And I don't mean experience it with, the same sensibilities that they have. We don't have their sense of smell or their ears or their eyes, but experience it in the present as it's happening. So we're basically watching the same channel, right? If my head is always in what's going to happen next, and Bodhi's worried about what's happening here, we're not watching the same show. We're on different pages. So to share a mindful moment together, we're going to get onto the same page, the same level, and be here now. And that's what mindfulness really is. So start to practice mindfulness. I've practiced mindfulness now most of my adult life, and it really is about just beginning with an anchor point, which is our breath. So we can take a breath in, take a breath out, feel how that breath feels, and experience that breath in our bodies. And another anchor point that we have with our dogs is experiencing how they feel and what their anchor points are. So touching my dog, feeling him, feeling Bodhi beneath my hand, that's my anchor point right there for the present. I'm going to be aware of the texture of his fur, and aware of how he looks in his expressions, and yes, even how he smells. We all have our own dog smell most of the time, don't we? And even how his breathing sounds. If I rest my hand on his rib cage, I can kind of feel his breathing. And this is the stuff of friendship. This is the stuff of being connected, and that's what we want to do here. So much of what happens when we get a dog is we focus on control, because we live on different pages so often that we have different agendas, and we get into this idea that we have to control what they do all the time. Otherwise, they're just going to go crazy, run amok. That's not really having a lot of faith in them. Dogs and human beings have been together for so long, and we're so successful as partners and as friends that we need to have a lot more faith that they're just not going to go berserk. A couple of hundred years ago, human beings and dogs, or thousands of years ago, for thousands and thousands of years, human beings and dogs have lived together harmoniously and as friends without the need of trainers or behaviorists or things like that. We got along together. It's only, relatively speaking, recently that we got this idea that we must control everything. We even see that in breeding. We have to control what they look like and how big they are and what their fur is like, but definitely on their behavior control. So control, control, control. And that drummed into our heads. And what happens is when we focus on that so much, we forget about the connection. And it's the connection that means everything. And part of the idea of control is the idea that we're smarter than they are. We have to lead them. We have to show them everything. That's only a half truth. Yes, there are things that we know better. As human beings, we have a terrific skill of being able to predict what's going on in the future, to remember and analyze the past in order to make those predictions. Our our prefrontal cortex, that part of our brain. We can do things like imagine, and it's a wonderful, wonderful skill set that dogs don't possess as great a skill set in that area as we do. So we tend to see big picture things. We can see where down the road, if I do A, then B will happen, and C and D down the road. So I can see if, like if Bodhi wants to, say, chase the squirrel into the street, and I see a car coming, I could see he'll chase the squirrel, he'll run into the road, a car may not stop in time, that kind of thing. That's wisdom. That's my wisdom, my area of skill set. But in sharing mindfulness with our dogs, we also want to share wisdom, because our dogs possess a skill set that we don't possess. And they need to lead sometimes. You know, this is not a dance where I'm always leading. I'm leading sometimes, he's leading sometimes. Bodhi's ability to connect with the present, his ability to be aware of his immediate surroundings and the stimuli and all the things that are happening right now, is very, very, very powerful and much better than mine. I can't hear as well as he can. I definitely don't have the same olfactory sense and sense of being able to detect different smells and patterns as he does. Even his vision for movement and visual patterns is superior to mine. So there are times when I need to lead because I have the skill set in that capacity to lead, but there's times where Bodhi and my dogs will need to lead because they have the skill set and the ability to do that. And I have to be sensitive to that. Let me give you a perfect example of what happened. I used to, many years ago, I ran a search and rescue group, a canine search and rescue group, and in Vermont, and I was working with my dog Oliver at the time. Oliver was about 8 months old, and we were on top of, we had just hiked up to the top of Mount Lafayette. It's part of the, I believe it's part of the Adirondack Trail. It's in New Hampshire. So it's in the White Mountains in New Hampshire, pretty near where I lived in Vermont. And we hiked up to the top there, and I was helping Oliver get used to the trails and learning to scent things and find objects and stuff like that. And it began snowing when we got up there. In Mount Lafayette, when you get up to the top of that, you know, the tree line gets a little lower, you don't get the big trees. And so when it starts to snow, especially in whiteout, it's really hard to see where you are. So it started to come down and come down and come down. And Oliver was sitting in one about 150 feet away from me. And I said, you know what? I don't even know where I am anymore. It's time we have to head back down the mountain. We've got to get back. You know, I don't want to get stuck up here. So I called Oliver over to me. And I said, come on, let's go. Here's the trail. Let's go. And he didn't budge. Called him again. He didn't budge. You know, I thought maybe he didn't hear me. It was windy. But he didn't budge. So I got upset. And I went over to him, and I was about to grab his collar and actually pull him toward me when I realized Oliver was sitting right by the trail marker. I was wrong and he was right. In fact, if I went back, and if I'd have gone the way I wanted to do it, it would have been not a pleasant experience. It was a big drop off there, and it just wasn't good. But where Oliver was the trail. So I didn't defer to his leading ability at that time, to his wisdom, and I would have had a mistake. So he was smart. So that was many years ago, and since then I've learned to follow my dog's lead. So if we're hiking and we're on the trail and they stop and they look, I trust them and I let them lead. If they seem nervous, I stop. If they seem want to turn around and go the other way for whatever reason, they lead, because these are times that they have skill sets that I don't possess. Now at other times, I have skill sets that they don't possess. So this is a complementary relationship. It's not where I am always the boss, because I don't know. I don't always know what's best. Sometimes these guys know what's best. And when we have a relationship and a friendship with our dog and we share wisdom, then we both learn to succeed and to thrive together as friends. You know, we're like two parts of one whole. Human beings and dogs together are a perfect complete picture. So it's not, you don't always have to be the boss. Your dog doesn't always have to be the boss. You have to share wisdom and respect each other's skill sets and learn to listen and learn to accept that. And some of that is about being humble. And that situation I had with my dog Oliver was a very humbling experience for me. And fortunately it turned out well. But being mindful with our dogs is getting out of our own heads, getting out of our own way sometimes, stepping down and realizing that they may know better. We don't always know better. Sometimes they do. So part of being mindful friends with our dogs is allowing them the ability to lead us as much as sometimes we lead them. It's a shared responsibility. We're both as a team. There's no leader and no follower. We do this stuff together. So that's what part of being friends is. And that's what sharing mindfulness is. You know, even being aware and being mindful and being present, I let Bodhi lead that. He's much better at it than I am. And I've been practicing it for probably close to 40 years. But still, Bodhi has that skill set that I don't possess. So he leads me on that. So being together with our dogs, taking a moment every day, at least every day, to just connect with them on a mindful level, it's a nice thing to do. So take a breath in, take a breath out. I think Bodhi's had enough here, so you can let him go, and we'll see you on the next Mindful Mutt Moments. Thanks.